Spread the fire, Ayeye. Welcome back to SMWX. We're here on the ground at the IEC Results Centre, and I'm joined by Tonic Manchidi, who is a Politburo member of the Land Party of South Africa. Baba, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sizwe. Thank you. I must congratulate you. You are doing a very good job, and no, for sure we are happy.
No, we're really glad to have you represented on the channel at last.
Sure, finally. Don't be captured.
No, don't worry. So,
yeah.
I think one of the interesting things surrounding the Land Party in this election has been the question of political tolerance and some of the intolerance that's been shown towards your party. Take us through, just what's been happening as regards the Land Party and some of the intolerance that's been shown.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Our stronghold is in the Western Cape, where we formed in Hermanus area, and that alone have been, for some reasons, a threat to the big three political parties. We have been struggling. You'll have seen when we did debate in Western Cape, where there was throwing of chairs and all that.
Take us through what happened from your perspective with the throwing of chairs, because it looked like a really terrible situation.
Yeah, look, a female member of our political party was attacked by a fighter from the EFF. And when the gentleman was questioned to say, but why would you do that? And then they responded with a fight. I'm just happy that the organization, which is the EFF in particular, in this case, they shown remorse, and then they said, look, let's have tolerance.
Sure.
But it was not only in the Western Cape, it also happened in Ekurhuleni here in Gauteng, when our comrades were in a meeting of campaigning. The ANC, they attacked our comrade. Basically, because of our policies, we believe we're bringing a solution to the country. We are the only organization which is calling for referendum on the complex issue of the land.
Okay.
And that alone, because we are different, we are singing a different tune altogether.
So how do you differ from the ANC and the EFF, and especially on this question of land, which is so central to your platform?
Absolutely. So we are saying the commercial land, which is what the capitalists don't want it to be touched. We're saying we are going to give our people a space to call a referendum. And when the people are saying, let's expropriate, we are going to do that. We have programs in place where we are going to give our people a skill, and then so that they know how to work the land.
Okay, so you want a referendum on the land question
100%.
so it can be sorted democratically, and then it can be expedited through that process?
Absolutely. The last referendum that was held here in South Africa, it was before 1994, when the decision was made that we go to elections and we could vote out the apartheid government. So the land issue is a complex issue now, so why don't you have a referendum? That's our stand. Yeah.
And what would you say to the idea that we've seen in Britain, for example, referenda can actually further polarize a society? Why do you think it would be a good idea in South Africa to put this to the people?
Look, like I'm saying, that we've got programs in place, in space already, whereby we will be telling to our people to say, look, obviously when it comes to commercial land, we are going to be giving you skill so that you know how to work the land.
Yeah.
Also, we're saying strengthen the property right. Make sure that you don't tamper with the properties of the people where they are staying. A lot of these political parties, they are not clear in terms of that. You will have seen in the past where taxpayers' money was abused by politicians running around the country claiming that they are doing consultations and they'll provide solution. Till this day, the date passed where Ramaphosa actually promised that he will be announcing the final results from their consultation. We are still hanging. So we know that there is no solution. It's not going to happen. It's just a delay tactic that politicians are playing. And we are the only political party that is bringing about a solution to this issue.
Are you in favor of state ownership of land or individual ownership?
Look, as we speak now in South Africa, the government is owning land here. Instead of them showing the country and the nation on how good they can use the land that they have in their hands, is terrible. That land is left unused. You know, so we are saying give the land to the people. We don't advocate for the politicians, because if you're saying state must own the land, it means if Sizwe is the president of the country and I'm not in good terms with Sizwe, what is going to happen? You know, we are of the view that Sizwe will deny me with the land. It's going to be abused. The politicians are going to play football, political football, with the land if you give it to the government. Give the land to the people, skill the people, and make sure that they produce from the land.
So the election is upon us. How are you feeling as we go into this election? What's the mood within the party?
Look, we ran a very good campaign, and also have been getting a lot of sympathy voters from other parties which are saying, look, because you are a new kid on the block, we couldn't join forces, but count on us. We're definitely going to give you the vote. More especially the leftist parties. They are saying definitely sure you have our vote. So it's not only the members that are going to be voting for us. If you remember, from the manifesto that we had on the 21st of March, only after that we managed to capture around 400,000 members. So definitely sure, victory is certain. We are going to Parliament, we are going to advocate and implement our policies. So it's not about us, but it's about the people who are actually going to be given the powers.
Mr. Manchidi, thank you so much for joining us on SMWX.
Thank you, Mr. Mpofu.
And when you get to Parliament, I know you're going to send me more messages that you must come on
No,
the
for
show.
sure. We'll be doing that.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Ayeye.
Ayeye.
Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX. And I'm very glad to be joined by James Selfe, who's the chairperson of the DA's Federal Executive Council. So nice to be with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an interesting election, and as we reach the culmination, I wonder, how has this election been different from some of the other elections that you've been a part of?
Well, I think for the first time since 1994, there's a real sense that people have choices, that they're not necessarily tied into their political affiliations of the past, and I think there's a great deal more fluidity in the electoral market than there used to be in the past, which is encouraging, but it's also challenging because it means that we have to fight for every vote, which we've enjoyed doing. We've had the biggest ever campaign in our history. We have sent people throughout the country to towns, villages, suburbs, townships, and we really have connected on the ground with voters from all walks of life. And it's been a very, very interesting experience.
And how are you feeling ahead of, an election which is so imminent?
Yes.
What's your mood and what's the sense inside the DA as we head to the polls?
Well, we are quietly confident. We've set ourselves some objectives. We think we will achieve those objectives, and we will have taken another step in the quest to build the party. We've grown in every single election since 1994. I think we will continue to grow, and we will be setting up the foundations for the next election in 2021, because all political development in South Africa is election to election to election. So I imagine that on the 10th of May, we will start planning for the 2021 election.
Sure. And as your role as chairperson of the Federal Executive and Council, you're often looked to for a negotiation, your experience in negotiations, and I suspect that may come in handy after this election. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen after the election, but what kinds of principles will you take into those negotiations should we experience any hung provinces, or even in Parliament where things might be a bit closer than the ANC might like to expect?
Well, I think the one thing we decide is that we are not going to make any commitments or engage in any discussions before the electoral arithmetic makes it necessary.
Sure.
So we don't speak to other political parties until such time as a coalition or co-governance agreement becomes apparent. Once that's happened, obviously we cannot go into a coalition or a co-governance agreement where the policy or principal differences between ourselves on the one hand and the coalition or co-governance partners on the other is so big as to make co-governance impossible. And so what we've done at this stage is done a very careful analysis of the manifestos of all the various political
Right.
parties to see where's the areas of commonality, where are the areas of difference, so that come that situation, we will know what it is that we have to talk about in order to see whether consensus is possible.
And what's your sense of how coalitions, particularly in big municipalities, have worked? I remember at the end of 2016, there was all this talk that coalitions in which you were a part would fall apart within 2 days. And look, there's certainly been, rough and tumble, but it seems to me as though the coalitions have been stable in a number of areas.
Yes, they certainly have.
What's your view on how coalition politics has already started to work in South Africa?
Well, coalitions, I think, are the way to go in South Africa. I think, in fact, in our country's history, governments have never changed except through coalitions. If you look at right back to 1924, there's always been a coalition that has caused governments to change. So I think it's a natural part of the South African psyche, if you like. And I think that the governments in which we have been in coalition have been remarkably successful because actually when you declutter everything and you look at what it is that the voters actually need and want, and you concentrate on that rather than your own prejudices and your own ideologies, you find that there's much more common ground than you thought was the case in the past.
So I think after this election, the DA is going to go into an interesting period, depending on obviously the outcome. But I think like all parties, there's been some contestation in the party from, I would say, a sort of more radically liberal interpretation of what the DA should stand for, as opposed to a sort of more, I would call it a more sort of expansive role of looking at where the DA should stand. How do you see the dynamics in the party working after this election, and are you confident that the party will hold together in a stable way as we move past May 8th?
Yes, I think it will remain stable because if there was to have been any disruption, it would have occurred before the lists were submitted to the IEC.
Sure.
So I think everybody that's in the DA at the moment is committed to making the DA work. And those, like other people who've left the party, have left it and have formed their own political organisations.
Right. And we'll see how they fare.
Well, and we'll see how they fare. But the point is that there's always a contestation of ideas within the DA. We encourage that contestation of ideas because that's what's part of our DNA. And we encourage lively debates. There will be debates about the direction, about the policy, about how we deal with race in South Africa, about how we overcome the burden of our past. These are all healthy debates, and debates which very few other political parties actually have.
It's been a pleasure to speak to you. All the best for the next few days, and no doubt the negotiations that will follow.
Thank you so much.
Spread the fire, Ayeye. Welcome back to SMWX. I'm here with Yolandi Le Roux, who is National Campaign Manager for Compatriots of South Africa. Yolandi, thank you so much for joining us on SMWX.
Thank you for having us, and I think you guys you've got a fantastic thing going.
Thanks so much. Now, you are a new party. This is your first election. Tell us about why you formed as a party and the specific niche that you're filling, which I think is a really interesting aspect of this election.
Well, we were formed for a couple of reasons, but I think primarily we were formed because there are a group of people in South Africa known and described as coloured people. Now, firstly, we want to say we do not recognise the name coloured. It is a name and a classification that was done by the apartheid government, and it's a classification that is still being used currently by our national government, even though it has been outlawed sort of as a nation or a classification. And the other reason why we were formed is, besides the fact that there are people who are classified as colours, you have groupings and cultural groups like the Khoi, the San, the Bushman, the Nama, the Korana, the Kamish people, who are not being recognized or represented within South Africa. So we were formed specifically with the aim of representing those groups of people.
Absolutely. And tell us more about the First Nation philosophy and the thoughts behind why those groupings who have been very marginalized in our society when we speak about questions of race, questions of land, why you think that needs to be brought more to the forefront of the political spectrum.
It has been 25 years since our so-called democratic government has come into ruling. But it has also been 25 years of that government, even though we have voted for them, totally ignoring the plight of the so-called people, the plight of the Khoi, the San, the Bushmen. Firstly, to recognize us as the First Nation of South Africa, and secondly, to provide us and give us our recognition in terms of First Nation status. And that is why it is critical that going forward from this election, that people that see themselves within those groupings, that they vote for a political party that truly stands for the issues that is important to them, but also the issues that has been ignored by every single political party. You have coloureds, Khoi, San, Bushman people that for the last 25 years voted for the DA, voted for the ANC, voted for other political parties, and has been promised that their issues will be brought to the fore. But we have been ignored, we have been sidelined, and it is time that we have to stand up for ourselves.
Now, your party has an interesting funding model of single-person funding, which I think is quite fascinating and original. Tell us more about how the party is funded and how that differs from other parties in this election.
Absolutely, because of the fact that we needed to start a party that looks after our own people. The party was started by Mr. Cheslin Felix, who's the founding president of the party, and because of the niche group of people that we represent, it has been extremely difficult to get buy-in from your big corporates that supports the ANC, the DA and other big political parties, and we have not been able to garner the support or political or financial support to actually run our campaign and get the party off the ground. So Mr. Cheslin Felix, being a ordinary person from the northern areas of Port Elizabeth, took the responsibility on himself, and himself and his family are sacrificing their personal monies to actually fund our entire campaign.
How are you feeling as we conclude, as you go into your first election, and what's the campaign been like for you as the National Campaign Manager?
The campaign has been challenging, but the campaign has also been extremely exciting because there are so many people that is disillusioned by other political parties.
Sure.
And they've been crying for a very long time, please give us our own voice. And that is exactly what we have been. So it's been challenging in terms of finances and lack of finances and lack of support, but it has been exciting in terms of how we were embraced and accepted by the people that we represent.
Well,
so we are looking forward to it, we are ready,
Absolutely.
and we're waiting for those votes to come in.
And wishing you all the best. Thanks so much for joining us on
Thank you
SMWX.
very much. Thank you so much. And absolutely for you and your team, I think you've got a great thing going. You are bringing the youth to the fore.
Absolutely.
And you are doing it in a very innovative way. So absolutely to yourself as well, good luck.
You heard it from Yolandi, not me. Spread the fire, Ayeye. I'm here with Kopano Mabusa, who is president of the Youth League of the International Revelation Congress. Kopano, thanks so much for joining us on SMWX.
No, thank you, Sizwe. Thank you so much.
Great to have you. And tell us a little bit about your party. This is the second election you're contesting. Tell us when you were formed and why you believe you are the choice for South Africans in this election.
To be quite frank and honest, the International Revelation Congress was formed in 2008
Sure.
by our founder and president, Ernest Mamba. And we've been the provincial candidates in the Limpopo province, actually. So after the ballot in 2014, we branched out to the national.
Okay.
So this is going to be our first national ballot, actually. So we're looking quite great at it. You
That's
understand?
cool. So you've focused on the provincial and now you feel like it's time
now
for you
it's
to branch
time we
out.
branched out to the international.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Now, as president of the Youth League, you have some interesting thoughts on questions of unemployment and youth unemployment.
Yes.
Take us through some of your thoughts on how we resolve that crisis in our country.
Now, based on our manifesto, this is what the IRC believes, actually, that we looked at stats that 70% of youth members are not actually employed. You understand? So what we saying with the IRC, we're saying that 70% of job creation that are going to be national will be going to the youth. You understand? And not only that, but we're going to give practical studies for the particular job creations and everything. Because if you look at most job creations right now, A person is an intern for 6 months. After 6 months, there's no job. It's back to, again, unemployment. So what we're saying is that we're not only going to give the youth only about 6 months of training, but we're going to give them training and a permanent job so that we can decrease the amount of unemployment.
I see.
So that's how we do
How
it.
is that connected to the question of education? Because I know that's another important aspect of your
Now,
manifesto.
in our manifesto, coming to education, we're saying from grade 4, kids should start studying for their career. Now, how so? We're saying if you want to be an engineer, you study engineering or components of engineering from grade 4. You understand? Now that we're eliminating the fact that people won't have less qualification are heading their job. You understand? Now, how we're going to do that is if you study engineering right now and let's say you get to grade 12 and you feel like engineering is not your field, you already acquired knowledge of engineering, meaning you can implement it in any given time of your life. So there's no time of saying you're not basically knowledgeable of other faculties.
Yeah.
Now we're also giving you an opportunity to branch out to other careers. So if you want to be a doctor, study human physiology, and then you carry on with that. So that's how we want to implement education. I mean, China is already doing that. They have most of the population now in their hands, in the palm of their hands, because of they believe that studying education with a relevant career from down is the relevant way to go. So that's what we want to implement in the education.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting proposal about how we change the education system right from the get-go.
Yes, from get-go.
Just tell us finally how you're feeling ahead of the election. This is your first national election.
Yes.
And
yes.
what's the mood? How are you feeling ahead of?
It's
May 8th?
nerve-wracking. It's an eye-opener actually, and you get to see the reality of the sitting there and actually be nervous, But we believe that a purpose is a purpose. And if you're predestined for something, you're predestined for it. So ahead in these elections, we just know that we are predestined for greatness as the ROC. So we're going to do great. So that's what we say.
Wishing you all the best ahead of May 8th.
Thank you so much. Great.
Ayeye. SMWX. No young people are around the decision-making table. Let some new voices come to the fore. Follow us on WhatsApp and catch us live Tuesdays and Thursdays. Out with the old, in with the new. SMWX.